Okay, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this discussion today. I'm Jerry and I'm part of the People Matters team, and it's a delight for me to welcome you all for this discussion. So, today we're talking about wellness for the new age workforce, and we're bringing this conversation to you in partnership with PolicyBazaar, and we're very excited for what's in store for you. So we know that the new age workforce today is really a very different workforce from say 5 years ago. Today you have the context of remote workers, you have contingent workers, gig workers, and they all need to integrate in a way. And this last 2 years has shown us the importance of wellness. And today there's a lot of evidence on the booming wellness market, and there's a need to address wellness needs of all of these different cohorts of employees. And there's a need also for businesses to make them more accessible, inclusive, impactful programs, wellness programs delivered at speed and at low cost. And we are seeing this need come up across different company sizes, right? From MNCs to startups to SMEs and so on. So we want to unpack some of this for you today, and we have a great panel of experts to discuss this with us, and they will try to navigate this from different prisms, right? From productivity to corporate health insurance plans, to maybe leadership. How do you sort of identify some strategic priorities for them? We will talk about some of these pointers and challenge areas, and we hope to make this conversation meaningful for you. So, quick housekeeping before we get started. There is time at the end of this session to take questions. So, feel free to use the chat window at any time. Share your thoughts, your feedback, your comments, your ideas, best practices, whatever. And we will also take any questions that you may have towards the end of this session. So, please use the chat window for that. Okay, with that, I'd like to invite our experts here today. We have with us Vidya Sagar Ganamani, who is the Chairman and Managing Director for EDECO India. And Vidya comes with over 3 decades of international leadership experience with a track record of leading global businesses and HR organizations while driving cultural, organizational, and business transformation. Welcome, Vidya. It's great to have you with us.
Thanks, Jerry. Thank you.
Also, we have with us Reenu Vora, who is the Chief People Officer at DB Shankar. Reenu comes with about 25 plus years of experience in HR strategy, leadership, learning and development, talent management, talent acquisition, labor law, and many such exciting areas. And she's been widely recognized leader. It's great to have you with us, Reenu.
Thank you for inviting. Pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. We also have with us Sumit Arora, who is the head of National Operations and Workforce Strategy for CBRE. And he's been with that firm for about 15 years, and he's actively involved in providing strategic advisory services to corporate clients on diverse aspects, including workplace assessment, mobility and work profiling, space utilization studies, location service advice, and so on. Welcome, Sunil. It's great to have you with us.
Thanks, Jerry. Pleasure to be here.
Also, we have thus Raghuvir Malik, who is the head of corporate insurance at PolicyBazaar.com. Raghuvir is the business head for corporate insurance at PolicyBazaar, and with over 12 years of experience in insurance tech, fintech, he's helped build and scale up businesses right from scratch. And he comes with a deep understanding of the Indian startup space with an expertise on end to end digital retail distribution. Great to have you with us, Raghuvir.
Thank you for that introduction. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. So let's start with a simple question, and this is going to be like a rapid question, if you will. So I just wanted to ask everyone, what is the number one corporate wellness goal or slash priority for you this year? So if you can maybe just briefly say in 1 or 2 lines, we will jump into the conversation. Can we start with you, Vidya?
Yeah, sure, Jerry. So to me, I think if you think about corporate wellness, I like to divide it into two buckets, right? So there's always this talk about health and well-being, and for me, it's both around physical health and well-being, and also mental health and well-being. It's how do we address both these topics in an integral way. And I think you spoke about the new age economy. I think there are so many hundreds of thousands of our fellow citizens who are coming into contract labor. Just think of your Swiggy delivery boy or the guy who brings your Amazon stuff home. Yeah, how do you take care of policies and things which also brings benefits to them? Next to permanent employees who come into work every day or stay at home and work. So I think working out something and addressing physical and mental health and well-being across the gamut of different types of work that is out there, to me, is a big challenge, and I think addressing that meaningfully is my number one uh, goal for my organization and the organizations we support, Jerry.
Great, couldn't have said it better. I think, Renu, what is your number one wellness goal?
Yeah, so I will say three when you were asking me for one. With this pandemic and people working from anywhere and then hybrid working, then working from office part time or whatever, there is a burnout that uh, we have come to know, and through various surveys also we have found that there is a burnout uh, among employees. Work life has certainly become an issue. So one focus area is on workplace. How do we make workplace where there is a positive work-life integration? Second focus is also how do we make employee take charge of wellness, then the organization driving it. So how do we make them aware that it is their wellness and they are the one who should take charge of it through various things which we can discuss later on. And third thing, in Shankar, we have a huge population of third party employees, or you can say agency workers. So how do we have a uniform wellness cover for all this population, because at the end of the day all of them are employees. So these three are the focus areas, and these three are the challenges as well. Thank you.
Fantastic. Sumit, would you like to go next?
Yes, so I think I'll continue the sequencing. We've had two, we've had three. I'll give you four in very summarized fashion, hopefully. So in our experience, actually, we've seen two levels of corporate wellness goals, and that's really been the experience with most clients we worked with as well. There is a larger organization-wide strategy which typically finds its way through most geographies, different businesses, and that's typically established at a global level. And then we've seen in most companies, most clients we've worked with, that there is always a business level wellness goal or a business level cultural nuance which gets established, and that's what sort of trickles down to the larger team. So I think from my perspective personally, as far as wellness is concerned, for the team which I'm immediately responsible for, if I was to summarize a goal in one line, it would really be to de-stress. I think that's the buzzword, for everybody today in the environment, and it's de-stress with an intent to maximize self-care to start with, and at the same time keep an eye out for sustained business productivity. These have to operate in rather not operate in isolation. They need to be operated in conjunction with each other. Number one, and secondly, I think it's very important for us to keep in mind that at a corporate level, when these goals are being established, I think three principles is what I just like to talk about right up front. That is, how flexible are your wellness goals over time? How are you embracing inclusivity at the time of establishing them? And at the same time, how are you respecting local cultures? So if we are able to bring these three or four elements together, at least that's the endeavor from our standpoint, to be able to both advise on clients, their workplaces, as well as deliver what we are doing at CBRE ourselves.
Great, great. Really well said. Raghuveer, are you going to go for the fifth? Five
No,
insights now.
I had 5 points, but I think four got covered, so now I'm left with only one. Right. No, so I feel one of our key challenges that we want to overcome this year is bringing personalization and flexibility to policies catering to a varied set of corporates. So not just the large corporates, which people on this panel are responsible for, and they have probably explored policies like this pre-COVID, right? Like half a decade ago, a decade ago. But I'm talking about, let's say, my sister's startup that has 50 members, 50 employees, right? Or a Swiggy, as somebody just mentioned, which has uh, X lakh delivery riders. How do you build policies that cater to both these sets of people? How do you make sure that that fine balance between flexibility, personalization on one end, and ease of implementation and pricing slash cost on the other end can be met? Now, the irony I feel is that if you do it well, personalization leads to better optimization of resources, which leads to reduced cost. So it's not an impossible challenge to solve. And if you ask me, this is something that our team is working very, very hard to try and solve over the next 6 to 9 months. So we've had limited success, and we hope to kind of perfect it over the next 6 to 9 months.
Great points there, Ranveer. So I want to come to Vidya. I think you'd spoken about this, this large challenge of trying to address health and mental health as well from a gamut of employee types, right? So and this month, with Pride Month and so on, the conversation has largely been on diversity priorities and so on. So when you think about this gamut of employee types and this sort of hybrid work context, what are some pain points that are emerging for you when you think about your wellness strategy and that's really top of mind for you?
Yeah, so let me just think it through from a couple of perspectives, Jerry. So let's address the very different kind of workforce that also Raghu referred to, right? About gig workers who come on short contracts. They work for a day, then take a day off, and they come back on the next day. Again, typically a delivery rider or an Uber driver or something like that. So how do you ensure that these people are covered through corporate wellness programs for the day they're at work? Yeah, and for the kind of work they do. So the question is, can we then hyper personalize policies and programs that can address these people? So I think there's one piece which is around hyper personalization of offers towards those kind of roles. That's one thing. The second thing, I now swing to the other extreme. I think Renu talked about a lot of people working from home. And I think if you just think of issues around working from home, there are a lot of times when people basically are sitting at their desks all day or at home in front of their laptops all day. I think many of us around this call know very well how the day gets extended by endless video calls, right, or Zoom calls or whatever. Now, and if you just think about what we are sitting on in India as a real epidemic, and I'm going to use that word very carefully, it is this growing body of people who are on the verge of obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. Yeah, so that's really a ticking time bomb here in the country. Now the question is, how do we then talk about wellness programs which are bespoke, where we start addressing these people, we start addressing their needs, addressing the need for them to move better, to eat better, and then how do you then monitor and track that to ensure that we are actually having a healthy population? Because to me, I think an unhealthy population, when it is physical unhealthiness, I think all of us in HR know very well how to do the measurement of absenteeism, absentee rates, etc. But then if you swing towards mental health and well-being, it's an it's really an unexplored territory for many organizations. And to me, there's a concept of presenteeism, which you talk about, especially in Western Europe, where people are simply not doing very well from a mental health perspective. So they may be present at work, they may be logging on, but they're not simply able to actually deliver performance that we expect of them. So that whole concept of presenteeism is something which is now being actively spoken about across Western Europe, simply because that proves to be a big hindrance to productivity in organizations. So to me, I think a couple of things, Jerry. If you step back, I think many of us in HR are well versed in having dashboards around engagement. Are people engaged, yes or no? But the question is, at what point in time will it make sense for us as organizations to have dashboards around health parameters of our organization? Now, you don't want to get into personal data because that's a step too far, but at least at an organizational level where data is anonymized, do we want to look at dashboards about the physical and mental health and well-being of our employees? What are those parameters we want to look at? And can we drive organizational change and culture change based on the difference we want to make in these dashboards? I think that's something that many companies are beginning to look at extremely seriously in Western Europe, and I think we need to start migrating those kind of thoughts also here already now, given the situation we are in, Jerry.
Right, absolutely. I think you've set the context very well, Vidya. I think in the current context, with the current realities, that right from health to also mental health, companies must really have this kind of dashboard, kind of view of what's happening with their companies. So, Raghuveer, I'd like to bring you here. You've been working in the solutions aspect of this, right? So, how are you thinking about the opportunity areas that companies have today in terms of whether it's group health insurance plans or the diverse set of policies that they need to think about, even for personalizing? How are you thinking
Mm.
about the technology opportunity to address some of these things?
Got it. So, I mean, if you really think about it, it begins at the construct of an insurance product, right? And fortunately, we exist in an industry where use and file is possible. So you can launch a product very, very quickly. Plus, wellness benefits can be integrated into your insurance policy. So for us, we have the flexibility to create products along with like-minded insurance companies and launch them in the market. If we notice that a lot of demand is coming from smaller companies, we can co-create products around wellness offering or value offerings for them. As Sir just mentioned, he said delivery riders, right? So we have active policies as on date with insurers. There are insurers like Care, Digit, others in the country that create a policy wherein if you have 40,000 employees, gig economy workers, some joining, some leaving, some staying for 3 days, some switching off the app for 2 days, you can configure a policy wherein the policy is active only for the period that they are there. And then, as Sir had also mentioned, there are dashboards available for you to see the unit economic of each transaction that has taken place across various cuts so that you can optimize on cost at a later date if you so desire, or just have a track of what is going on. So I think the first step comes in better coordination with the creators or the manufacturers of the product. On one hand, you have the insurance company. On the other hand, you have wellness partners, right? Um, Today you have a boom in terms of the wellness technology space in India. You have companies that have built very, very deep pan India networks when it comes to things like doctor consultations, specialities for online consultations with doctors, lab tests in tier 3, tier 4 cities and towns in India. um, and these are fairly digital in nature. So the second step is to integrate your offering, your insurance offering, into a wellness ecosystem, so that a company does not now need two apps or two digital platforms, one from a wellness player, one from an insurance company or a broker or a TPA. So that's the second step, to make it more easily utilizable by your employees. The third thing that we do is we've gone and integrated with HR portals, for example. Right now, I'm sure any of the people in this group would know that, and anybody in the audience who's gone through an implementation of a group health insurance policy understands that it's a very service heavy policy. There are Excel sheets moving around the organization. There is data moving around from TPA to broker to insurer to client to various departments within the client, various head offices within the client to the central team. It is not required, right? So there are clients of ours where we've integrated with Oracle's HR management system, or SuccessFactor, SAP's HR management system, or Darwin Box's HR management system. and their only tool who uses that has a single source of truth as far as data is concerned, right? They don't need to send Excel sheets for our data to say the same thing. So that's the third part, right? And then the last part is to roll this out to employees in a manner where it is easy for them to consume, right? Just think about it. If and all of us work for companies, if we are presented with an opportunity to utilize something that our company is giving us, but it takes me 6 steps to use it, and 3 apps to download and 6 pieces of information to put in to be able to access those apps, I'm not going to use it. I have enough work as it is during the day. I really don't have time for going through that journey. But if you give me a WhatsApp sign-in experience based on my mobile number, right? You give me the UI UX that I'm used to when I use a Zomato or an Uber or a Urban Clap or any of the larger kind of brands on the consumer side today, and you give me the features that are truly relevant to me. I would really like to use that particular benefit that my corporate offers me. So I think there's no one thing, Jerry, just to kind of sum it up, that helps to provide a approachable and personalized policy for a company. It involves these technology interventions, but I may also add that it involves a team on the back end that understands how to structure flexible benefits, understands how to to really advise a corporate on what risk they want to cover for whom. And you need technology on the front end and the back end to be able to disseminate this intelligence in a manner that your employees consume it. So I hope I've answered your question. Sorry, I may have gotten lost in my own
Yes,
conversation.
absolutely. You have. I really like the emphasis that you brought to the ease from an employee standpoint, also.
Correct.
Otherwise, it's just going to be another policy or a framework that is not
Yeah.
utilized or not even aware of, right? I mean, people are not even aware of. So, Renu, I'm coming to you for the next question on what maybe some of the things that you are doing within DB Shankar to champion wellness. You've identified, some priority areas addressing burnout, work-life integration, third-party employees, and so on. So, how are you thinking of some of the solutions aspect of these things?
So we in DB Shankar are quite serious about wellness. But I'll just give you a background. A couple of years back, we had a case in an organization of an employee who committed suicide, who died by suicide. And it was a very strange case because he never uh, talked to anyone about what stress he had and all those stuff. And then we also had, and then I became quite aware and I started being very close to managers and talking to them about such signals. And then we came to know that there are managers who had some team member, this team member's wife and son had some mental issues. The employee was not able to, concentrate on the work. And the manager thought that, this guy is not productive. And he made a case of performance and asked the person to leave. But then, uh, if you take these cases as one off, then they may not speak much about the culture. But when you start relating to it as an organization, you can do a lot around this. Uh, so we have been doing our wellness entire thing with various strategy, starting from awareness. We run a lot many awareness program throughout the year. So we have health coaching, health presentations, webinars, community wellness events, and so on for creating awareness among employees. We have a signed up EAP, and VST spoke about mental health, and we have employee assistance program. The usage is maybe 12%, 15%. uh, One would believe that the usage is really the need-based usage, but you would never know because there's a lot of stigma attached to it. And also, people are not that digital savvy, At times, they would not like to go through the route of making a call, fixing a time on helpline, and so on. And there is where we have to make them, their behavior undergo a change and let them experience that this is more unobtrusive. So we have a lot of focus on EAP. We run surveys on employees, a dipstick survey, to find out how is the EAP being used, and on what areas it is being used, because the data is quite confidential. So we keep on talking about it. And there are people who would come forward, and if they have taken parenting tip on EAP, if they have taken how to quit smoking through EAP and they were successful, they generally come forward and volunteer and speak about it. We also work a lot on preventive, because as I said, we're making the employee empowered. So preventive means we have this free preventive health checkup. We run campaigns around it. It is not that it's open throughout the year. If anything is open throughout the year, you will always say, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it on a Sunday. Okay, let me do it on 15th August because that's a holiday or whatever. But when you say that you have to do it in the first 2 months of the year, so that you can make a plan for corrective action. So if your cholesterol is high, you can work on it. So we run those kind of programs. We don't make it mandate, but we kind of run a lot of stories around it, so that people undergo those preventive health checkup, which is free of cost for them. So I talked about awareness, I talked about prevention. I also talk about diagnostic. We have a tie-up with various agencies, and we are able to pass on some discount to people, to our employees, on diagnostics, so that they are able to use it. And we also have this online consultation. So we have signed up with an agency, quite famous one, for online consultation. We found the behavior of employees in the initial period, it did not change, because maybe they are more used to spending maybe rupees 800 per visit, but going to a doctor physically. And then we had people, very senior leaders, who used this online consultation, and they found very positive results around it. They could get their entire prescription on email or on WhatsApp, and say that they said, oh, hey, this is very useful. And slowly it has picked up, and you have 8 consultations free in a month, and this is like direct saving on your pocket. So consultation is what is one of the strategy that we have, wellness product that we have in the organization. We also have a very strong health insurance cover, which has a good buffer built into it. We have signed up with our TPA, and we organize a lot of events and activities. We have signed up with a health uh, or health application, and we do various challenges. We run various challenges and events, which has maybe around 30% participation. I won't say that everybody is running and logging and doing those yoga and other things, but I would believe 30% also is a good traction. That is where we are. But I want to add here that when we ran our employee um, you know, satisfaction survey, we found that we got a very high score this year, but we got a low score on work-life integration. But people say there's no correlation because you got such a high score on employee satisfaction, so there's no correlation with the low score on work life. But and I believe that in this year it may not impact it, but in the next year when there's high burnout, it may impact. So we are really working on how do we ensure that wellness is there, and what is the role of workplace in that? We cannot just say that the employee is responsible for their health. We cannot blame the employee that he or she is sitting all through the day, doesn't go for a vacation. Why don't they take vacation? And we have such questions coming from leadership that why don't they just don't like to leave. They want to work late, but it is not like that. You have to look into your processes as well, that really our employees able to take leaves. And I think their managers play a very important role, and workplace and HR has a big role to play in that.
Jerry, can I just pick up on one point that Renu made? Because I think it's a extremely interesting point about mental health, right? I think to me, there is like Renu also mentioned, there's a certain stigma attached to discussing about mental health. And I think the first step in overcoming that stigma is indeed in making it discussable. Yeah, so how do you ensure that these topics are something that are transacted upon in a public forum, by, amongst others, the leadership of organizations. Because to me, I think when leadership makes themselves vulnerable, you will automatically see that people deeper in the organization will also come forward with these things. I think that's an extremely important thing. And just to touch upon Renu's earlier point about contract employees and how do you make sure that they get the same things that permanent employees get, um, we ran a we ran during the course of last year when there were a lot of people, of course, struggling with mental issues. We ran video seminars online for all our 35,000 contract associates across the country on mental health and well-being. Simple tips and tricks to actually bring peace to your mind, and those were amongst the most attended seminars, huh? Even by blue collar employees, because as long as you make it simple, you make it colloquial, and you make it discussable, I think people come there and they're willing to share and listen and pick up tips and tricks, because everyone knows what they're struggling with, but they don't know how to put it into a certain discussion frame or into a context that they themselves are in. So I think spot on, Renu, making these topics discussable is one of the key enablers for actually driving improvement on this topic.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah, agree.
So another point that Renu mentioned that I found very useful is just having an awareness of the behavior when it comes to wellness. I found that quite interesting. That is this something that people will pick a phone call to discuss? Are they comfortable doing this? I think that kind of reflection also feeds into what Raghuveer spoke about a little earlier on what happens at the front end and back end, and are we paying attention to some of these data points that we need to think about? Thank you so much for sharing that, Renu. Sumit, I'm coming to you. Earlier in the conversation, you had mentioned, what was like a business level cultural goal that companies need to think about, and the importance of flexibility. What are you seeing in your conversations with organizations? What are some broad workplace level designs that need to happen to make a culture of wellness?
Yeah, I think there is, one more added layer of complexity over and above what Vidya and Renu already spoke about. And that is the fact that remote work and hybrid work is now pretty much ingrained in most organizations we are working with, right? That's something which is a reality, not associated with hybrid work till now in any way, or not experienced it in any way, which is what's going to be the future. Now, in the middle of all of this, where we come in is, and we start working with clients, is mostly towards trying to understand, how the day in a life of employees is expected to be in the environment. And as the more we talk to clients and the more we talk to leaders and employees, we understood that there are two layers to this. There is a growing realization that home working needs to be enabled as much as office working going forward, and I think that's the part which the market often misses, that you're always focusing on a lot of wellness, sustainability related benefits, etc., which you're providing for employees, making offices, making workplaces, or rather designing them in the way which serves your wellness objectives. But home environments are often ignored. So the first point, which I think was a key realization which came to mind for us when we spoke with sectors, and pretty much all sectors and industries over the last 2 odd years, is there is a large focus which needs to be put in place around how can you make home environment sustainable from a wellness standpoint, what needs to be done there, what sort of policies, what sort of support needs to be offered, what demographics are you catering to, what level of employees are you talking about. A large chunk of our population today still lives in paying guests and shared accommodation for some of the large tech setups, the large banking setups. And there it's becoming more and more difficult to sustain in these environments, and not much is being done. That's number one. Secondly, from a workplace standpoint, we've seen that it's always existed, it's nothing new. I think the relevance of that has become a little more over the last 2 years because of COVID and all the other benefits, and I would say the focus around wellness as and when it's increased. But small design interventions have been put in place by many companies in their workplaces. So things like placements of central waste bins and repro areas? How much are you motivating employees to walk through the entire floor to be able to make sure that they remain fit over a period of time? A lot of companies have come up and actually intentionally gone for office designs where they've connected two of their floors through internal staircases, trying to encourage employees to again move around in the environment as much as possible. A lot of focus on air filtration, air quality, huge amount of focus on I think the kind of biophilia which you're placing in office today, the greenery, etc., which is around in the space. How are you giving them opportunities to recharge and refresh? And I think that's a key ask which is coming to the table from a lot of our clients also when we talk to their employees through the discovery process. Because stage one for us before we provide any recommendations is really to be able to understand what employees aspire for. And when we talk to them, there is a clear ask which is coming our way that workplaces today do not provide enough opportunities for community building, for recharge, for making sure that there is that instant avenue to go somewhere in the space, spend that 10 minutes, get a little bit of refreshments, look around, bump into people, have few conversations, come back. And designs are starting to reflect that as we speak over a period. Like I said, the importance of some of this has got just more amplified over the last 2 years. So today, 8 out of 10 companies I think are very, very actively looking at making sure that how can real estate design or their workplace design not just reflect wellness objectives, but how can they actually help them enable those objectives or achieve those objectives a lot better. The other point which I just wanted to quickly touch upon is this importance of technology in this entire space, because I know some of us have already touched upon it in the past, but that's been more from the perspective of making benefits accessible and policy support accessible to staff and employees. But think of it in a way that what has happened to the manner in which we collaborate today. If you look at what we are doing today, we are sitting on a webinar right now. Imagine a space in office where majority of the meetings are now starting to become somebody is sitting at home. Is there the right technology provisions in the space to be able to make sure that there is enough equity and the participation levels are equal and equal opportunities are being given to all attendees as part of this collaboration setup, right? That is a big, big ask in the market today by implementing the right technology, because psychological safety and psychological well-being are becoming more and more important. So imagine a worker who is sitting at home, who's availed of home working for 2 days a week, for instance, and he knows his colleagues are in the office at the same time, where the manager is also in the office. The psychological discomfort of the fact that an employee in office will get better access to the manager versus me sitting at home and running a meeting and not being able to contribute as effectively as what somebody sitting in the room would, is a big, big discomfort today. And for organizations which rely on a lot of virtual and mixed presence meetings like this, where collaboration is a big part of their day-to-day running, these kinds of aspects are also becoming top of mind, and they're all part of the larger psychological well-being piece, which and mental health, all of it we've already spoken about. So I think themes like these are starting to emerge. We are seeing more and more companies starting to adopt these practices. Some are more design centric, some are more technology centric. It needs to be a package. It needs to all come together to be able to support the market in the right way.
Absolutely. Great points there, Sumit. I think right from the importance of work home needs from a sustainability, wellness and sustainability standpoint, workplace design, and the challenges of equity when it comes to technology. I think those are great insights for our
Sumit,
audience. Uh,
Jerry, can I ask Sumit a question?
Go on. Nitya.
Sumit, I think interesting, right? When we talk about work from home, etc., there are a lot of people who sit at home and also are spending hours together. Do companies like yours, Sumit, offer support in terms of ergonomic workspaces at home and enabling people to also invest and buy things from? I'm sure you guys have negotiated massive contracts with furniture suppliers, etc. Is there a possibility, or do you do it, where you offer these things to corporations, where you of course are landlords for, and where you support their employees in procuring these equipment at the same prices you procure? Because that would be really helpful, huh?
Yeah, so depending on the nature of the relationship, some of that is already in place. So we do a bit of that. But I think, the earlier points which you mentioned, if I leave the procurement side aside for a moment, but just the fact that how can we effectively support the entire workforce who's working from a home environment, right from ergonomic setup towards tips and tricks for, how do you normally conduct your day, even things like leadership training as to how should they be able to do or rather manage hybrid teams. That's a big miss in the market today, right? Today, managers, unfortunately, well, I won't generalize anything here or give a judgment, but I think a large part of our leadership and managers still rely on presenteeism and wanting to see employees for a portion of the day to be able to get some comfort that yes, work is happening. And in all of these kinds of environments, I think employee training, leadership training to be able to manage hybrid teams and softer inputs like these need to be addressed, especially in a home working or a hybrid scenario. So right from, I would say, helping organizations procure these kind of furniture, etc., putting in place these solutions for employees at home, to providing change management support to staff, to leaders to be able to manage effectively, to be able to run these sessions with a larger group of people and train them up as to how can they respond most effectively in a hybrid environment. We've got bits and pieces and service lines which cater to all of these today. So yes, in a nutshell, we do all of that, and I think we are seeing that the requirement and the need for some of that in the market is only growing. It's grown tremendously over the last year or so, understandably so.
Yes, absolutely. I'm conscious of time. I think we have 5 minutes before we take on audience questions, but I do want to round up to a few questions we definitely want to address. One of the things I'm hearing from this conversation is that, of course, we don't seem to have all the answers right now, but we are also figuring out things as we go along. So, Vidya, when it comes to leadership, for all of these ideas to really work, you do need leaders who are receptive to ideas, thoughts, feedback. What are some challenge areas there, and how can that be best addressed according to you?
So to me, there are a few things. I'll touch upon a couple of points here, Jerry. For me, leadership is about saying that a human life is equal to a human life equals to a human life, irrespective of the hierarchy in the organization. Yeah, and then the value of that life always has to be constant. And why do I say this? I think when we draw out insurance policies that we roll out across the organizations, I always, at least one of the key things that we have driven here at Edeco is we have a standard policy which cuts across all levels of the organization, irrespective of it's an entry level employee or somebody on a management team or myself. It's just a standard healthcare policy that we roll out. Same benefits, same coverage, etc. Of course, people have the ability to scale it up to whatever they want. So for us also, I think one of the key things is as leaders, we say we draft out a policy which is common. We provide the flexibility for individuals to add on things to take care of their very specific needs. Yeah. So for example, if there is a single earning family household, do you provide the flexibility for that person to take care of not just his parents or her parents, but also the parents of the spouse? Yeah, because, for example, that could be an integrated offering that is really required by that family given their situation. Similarly, if there is somebody who is higher up in the management, he or she could always add on multiple other coverage for themselves to increase their correct me if I use the wrong words, increase the coverage that they're entitled to in the course of a year. So I think as leaders, I think when we set that example and lay a foundation which makes equality an important element of health and healthcare in an organization, I think that's when we set the right mindset in the organization, and we also set the right example as leaders. Huh? So to me, that's an important element of leadership, especially in this area of health and well-being and the support infrastructure we need from insurance policies for our employees, Jerry.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Vidya. Renu, I'm coming to you with the next question around budgets, right? I think I wanted to sort of ask you how you're thinking about it. Of course, the economic tailwinds have changed in the last few weeks. There's rising inflation, there is, reduction in funding, there are job cuts, and how are you thinking about wellness in this context in terms of the budgets? Because of course it will differ from company to company, the size and access to resources that they all have. But how do you encourage maybe some of your peers to think about this?
So you're right, it differs from companies to company. Fortunately, our company is making, good results due to in the pandemic time as well. Uh, but I would say that in the COVID times, I think most corporates have realized that it's very important to focus on wellness. Most corporates have become very customer centric. When we say that we are customer centric and we are employee centric, and employees come first or they come equal than the customers, I think wellness has has a business case. Uh, Having said that, yes, we had a couple of people in the organization who questioned uh, the spend for third-party employees or agency staff because it is questioned a lot, you know. But then it depends upon the organization's values. So if we as organization believe that an employee centricity means all employees who are in the value chain, then things become easy. So uh, what is the solution then to corporates where the P&O, the HR people are having a case where they would like to push it to their business, but businesses would say that there's a lot of cost towards insurance, towards other things, online consultation, and how can we spend that huge an amount? Um, so we also have tried our we have tried a lot around talking to the brokers. We have a global broker. We go through them. We have TPA. We also get a lot of free webinars and free consultations through our TPA. So we are able to use those freebies. Uh, at the same time, I think it's important for the organization to understand what is the organization's purpose, bigger purpose. And then you have to link this with the wellness,
Yeah.
then
Yes.
going the other way around. Yeah.
Absolutely. I really like that you pushed us to think more about the values and purpose and work from there to think about this. So thank you so much for that. We'll jump into the audience questions for a moment, and I'll try to plug in some areas we have not covered as well. Um, with more and more hybrid or remote working models in play, how can we measure effectiveness of wellness solutions? Raghuveer, could you weigh on this? And also, how is maybe PolicyBazaar thinking about this challenge area also?
Sure. Before I get to that, I just wanted to kind of talk about the cost element of typical group health insurance slash wellness policy, right? What I've noticed is that depending on the kind of company, depending on the budgets that they have for it, right? It typically ends up being between literally as cheap as 1,000 rupees per year to about 18 to 19,000 rupees per family per year, right? That's the range that I've seen. The really, really extravagant companies go as far as 18, 19,000. Now, if you look at 6 lakh rupees as the average cost or CTC to a company of an employee, you're talking about between 0.1%, 0.18%, and 2.8% of overall payroll cost. So I understand that inflation, presents challenges to us, but honestly, I feel that this is a cost that more and more corporates, especially the smaller ones, the larger ones already were practicing this, right? Have realized is not a groundbreaking cost. So what you can actually provide to your employees in terms of a benefit or an incentive, which they can't get on their own outside, um, is massive compared to the percentage of payroll cost that you invest in a group health insurance policy. Sorry, just that's what I was thinking of while the last two questions were being answered. Um, so when we talk about the hybrid or the remote workspace, I think that's what the question was about, and about how do we track the effectiveness of a wellness solution. See, if your implementation is quasi or completely digital, your tracking, regardless of whether you are in office or at home, will be there, right? And thereby you will be able to measure the effectiveness of a policy. Um, Unless of course it's got to do with an ambulance standing outside your office, which is also, like, let's say, for example, services that we provide. If we let's look at the basic example of filing a claim, right? We have an app. You go on the app, you upload your documents. You can also go on a web platform and do it. You give a few brief details about what your claim is for, especially in the case of a reimbursement claim. and you submit or file a claim, right? If you're the kind of employee who is not comfortable with our app and would prefer a WhatsApp bot in Gujarati or Kannada or Hindi or English, we also have that. Now, the minute the employee clicks submit, in my logs on the back end, I know the time and date and the document list and the details that were provided for a particular claim. It was not an email, which is unmeasurable. It does not depend on when the TPA or the broker or the insurer accepts the submission of a claim. It does not depend on the Indian postal system, right? It depends only on me as an employee pressing submit or send. That in my mind, I'm sorry, it's a very simple example, but that in my mind is tracking, right? Now, the plethora of things you can do just by having this data in a digitized format. I know what city the claim came from. I know what hospital the claim was at. I know what disease that claim was for because I've got certain cuts that I take them in. Was it an injury? Was it an emergency, etc. Right? I know whether it was the employee, the spouse, the parent, the parent-in-law, the pet, who was the claim for, right? And and I know at the end of this entire journey, I also track how long the TPA or the insurer takes to pay that particular person, right? Um, Small things like, let's say, for example, if a payment is done, we'll send the employee an email with the UTR number of the payment, right? Um, Once the claim is filed, we will send a customer feedback survey form to the employee or to the member of the employee who claimed it, and we get feedback and results from that. So now, as an organization or as a broker, right, both as a company as the broker, we can look at escalations as a percentage of total claims filed. We can look at cities with particular trouble in terms of the claim tat, right? We can look at particular diseases which create referrals or revised questioning by the TPA or the insurer and pre those by adding a column asking for that information up front, right? In case the employee does not submit the right documentation, we have OCR we've not built it out, we're building it out. You can have OCR in such a manner that you can look at the document and say, hey, this is not clear enough. Hey, you only provided page 1 of 2 of the discharge summary. Please provide page 2 of 2. So that you don't go through a 5-day TAT followed by a request, followed by another 5 days. So when we come to measurability of an insurance policy or of a wellness plan, um, by creating digital interfaces and digital data structures, it doesn't matter whether you're in office or you're work from home or sitting internationally. It really doesn't matter. What matters is uh, how are you utilizing the benefits of your policy, right? So one more example I'll give you. Typically what we've noticed, at least, I mean, now things are changing drastically over the last 1.5 years itself, but before that, what we noticed, if you wanted to take the benefit of an online consultation or a lab test, right? You had to call a toll-free number, and you'd call the toll-free number. They would pick up, may not pick up. When they do finally pick up, they say, okay, sir, I will arrange it and SMS you the details. This was the process flow for going for a lab test near your house. uh, Now I know your location. You come, press a button, you know what lab your policy offers you pick the package, you click OK, it tells you the labs near your house. If it is the kind of test that can be done at home, you have various lalpat labs, etc., like that, which are on the panel. Again, the same question that this person asked, which is, how do you measure the effectiveness? Now, if a company has paid X rupees for this particular service, I can now give them data on a daily basis that says, hey, you've had these many people using it, divided by the amount that you've paid, which means that this is the amount that you've paid per unit utilization. I can answer the corporate or the HR saying, look, this is the amount of time it took to clear an average of your claims. This is the number of interventions that we made. So I think the whole effectiveness of wellness solutions depends on how you handle your database structures in the backend and how you are effectively disseminating the benefits of your policy to your employees.
I think, Raghuveer, I think there's an interesting element aspect there, right? About digitization, yeah, which you guys are driving. To me, I think fundamentally it will also address another point that I think all of us, and myself, Sumit, were talking about, is about adoption, correct? Because I think adoption continues to remain low for many of the things. And then
Yes.
digitization is a great way of nudging people to actually
Yeah.
make use of these things. And then maybe we need to also come to a discussion with our TPAs and insurance companies as to how do we put metrics around using the digital apps that are rolled out to
Correct.
nudge our adoption of these things by a greater and greater percentage of our employee base. I think that would be an excellent element of actually driving these programs deeper into the organization and driving up adoption.
Right, sir. I'll just add one more point to that, Vidya, sir. Right, like, uh, one is obviously you look at data, you see how you can drive adoption through better communications and seminars with the employees, right? The others is also, adapt the digital to the employee and not the employee to the digital.
Correct.
A factory worker in Baddi would prefer a WhatsApp app in Punjabi, possibly. A factory worker in Gujarat would prefer Gujarati as a language, just parts of it at least, to make it simpler to
Yeah.
use. These wellness apps are catered towards urban, technology, banking, financial services companies, not manufacturing, not traditional entities, right? WhatsApp is
Absolutely.
way, way, way more relatable than an awesome, phenomenal app. So I think the right mix of the two also leads to further adoption, along with obviously better communication and explanation to the employees.
Absolutely. I think this whole conversation, I think, did answer from some of the follow-up questions as well. So that was great. I think there's a great opportunity that digitization technology brings in accelerating adoption, implementing your programs well, and seeing the impact as well. So thank you so much for sharing that. Sumit, I'm coming to you with a question on retention. Do you have any insights around the talent strategy with respect to health and wellness and its impact on retention? What are some thoughts around that?
Yeah. Yeah, so no documented data as such, which till now has revealed that it's only wellness or it's only a particular policy. I think one thing is increasingly clear: attrition is a big problem for most organizations today. In excess of 20-25% is what everybody has witnessed over the last year, and that's a harsh reality. um, I think wellness, health and well-being, and whether it's policy level support, whether it is anything which we spoke about through the session, right? Home support, office enablement, technology, it is the package. Definitely, we have got a lot of feelers from the market, and those feelers are very clear that organizations who are thinking about people, or at least they are giving a very clear perception to the people that we are here to take care of you. The wellness programs are not just physical; they are, it's mind and body and soul both. So it's both the mental side of wellness as well as the physical side reflected through design. I think that's starting to definitely have an impact on how employees are perceiving organizations and their retention there. That is becoming very clear in conversations. Very rarely, in the last so many years, have we had instances when you're sitting in front of a campus hire. And we've been hiring for the last many years. I've been part of campus recruitments every year. I think over the last year specifically, we had cases where a fresher out of campus is asking you a question at the time of hiring, that what is your company's hybrid policy? What is your company going to do in the long term to make sure that I don't burn out as an individual? We've not seen that. We've never seen that for years happening, but it is today a reality. Most interview processes are going through those questions coming in and related questions coming in. And I think as employers, we just need to understand and absorb the fact that this is how it's going to be. And we need to really align our approach around it. The other piece is that keep in mind that today, more than any other time before, I think we are working with a multi-generation workforce. So we've got people who've been around for those 15, 20, 25 years in the company. We've got freshers coming in. We've got people who are mid-age somewhere. So you've got a mix of these profiles who've sort of come into the company and come into various work forums with very different aspirations, and that is clearly having an impact on the kind of expectations they have from workplace, from policies, the role of HR, the role of business, the role of leadership. So, in a nutshell, I don't have documented data which has proven that it's only because of a wellness strategy that retention has increased. But we have, I think, more than enough feelers from the market that if it's a well packaged solution where wellness is an integrated aspect as part of all of these, and the right messaging is sent through the entire organization, is definitely starting to have an impact on how the organization is being perceived in the market. That's something which is, I think, well established.
Absolutely. We are out of time. I'm conscious of that. I just wanted to address one more question, maybe very quickly, Renu. There's a question on how do you, if I could just paraphrase this question, how do you sort of inculcate this empathy from a manager's perspective when it comes to wellness? Could you briefly touch upon that?
Yeah, so it's a cultural issue. I would say that there is no straight answer to that. Uh, Manager is bound to only talk about task at times. In most conversation we have seen in the a Teams call and other thing. Sorry, I'll pass it to Vidya. I'm having a trouble in my throat. Yeah,
Sure.
Vidya, want to try your hand on this?
Yeah, yeah. Then I'll pick it up. Sure. Now, to me, I think again I go back to leaders and leaders showing how they handle these topics in wider audiences. Because to me, I think if you expect a manager deep in the organization, far removed from management layers, to show empathy, he should see that that's the way that the company ticks. It should be seen from CEO down that empathy is at the heart of how we operate businesses. To me, I always use a simple analogy. I say, when you play football, you can kick the football as hard as you want, but never touch the foot of the player, right? That's the spirit of the game. So you play the topic hard, but you don't hurt the person involved. I think, to me, empathy comes in those ways. And then, as long as leadership teams we demonstrate that on a consistent basis, I think it will eventually seep into the organization. And secondly, I think we also have to be very cognizant of when there is an absolute lack of empathy or an absolute style of leadership which is completely against the culture of the organization. As leaders, we need to act, and we need to act very clearly, very fast, and very publicly, because to ensure that that doesn't get replicated. So to me, there are two things. So demonstrate what is good behavior. Two, nip problematic behavior in the bud. Renu, I hope I
Absolutely.
kind of answered the way you would want
Yeah.
to.
Thank you, Vidya. Yeah. Sorry. So yeah. So same thing. We emphasize a lot on this particular thing that be firm on the issue, be polite on the person. So I think that is where empathy lies, and it's so it's difficult to make it a part of culture unless you also build your reward program around that, not so directly but indirectly. Are you reprimanding those managers against whom you get complaint? Are you acting on complaints on time? Because you would be hearing not many complaints about managers
Yes.
high-handedness. Are you acting it on time? Are you taking it seriously? Or you are
Yes.
saying this is so successful manager, he or she is so successful, let's ignore it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Great. I think those are great insights. We had a lot of actionable tips that you could take as audience. So I'd like to thank Vidya, Renu, Sumit, and Raghuveer. Thank you for taking your time and sharing all of these insights. This was really insightful. I'd also like to thank our partner PolicyBazaar for helping us curate this session and for enabling us to have this discussion. It's been a pleasure hosting all of you. Stay tuned for more such exciting discussions and virtual panels. Have a great day, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure meeting you
Thanks,
all.
Jerry.